Grace to you and peace from God our Creator and Christ our Redeemer. Please be seated. When we read Scripture, we sometimes forget that it is literature. Perhaps it's because of the certain amount of pomp and circumstance with which we read it out loud, or perhaps it's because some religious leaders discourage reading it in any way that is not literal, or perhaps it's because we consider it to be sacred text. However, the fact is that Scripture is also literature, and as such, it employs a wide variety of literary techniques and styles to engage the reader and to communicate the author's understanding of God. This morning's reading from John is no exception, and among other techniques, it uses multiple layers of irony to reveal religious truth. The first irony is that though the main protagonist is a blind man, it is everyone else in the story that is unable to see him. The disciples who are traveling with Jesus when he spots the blind man don't see the man, but only see the sin which they assume must have been committed, that he be born blind. The disciples don't see the man. They see blame waiting to be assigned. Likewise, the villagers among whom the man has lived his entire life don't see him, but only see his blindness. So complete is their inability to see this man that when he is given sight, the villagers, his neighbors who have known him since he was a child, are unable to recognize him. Then there are the religious leaders who also do not see the blind man, but only see the infraction against religious law that his healing represents. Even we, the readers, are drawn into participating in this collective blindness towards this man, knowing him only as the man born blind, or the man who had formerly been blind, depending on where we read about him in the plot line. Though he lived in the midst of community, it becomes clear that he was never a part of it. We might ask how much he really lost when he is cast out of the community at the end of the story. The second irony is that this man, though he is blind, is the only one in the story that can see. He's the only one who is capable of seeing what is actually happening, and he's the only one who recognizes Jesus for whom Jesus is, and in so doing, comes to believe. This blind man is the only one in the story who saw God at work in his midst. By contrast, the disciples certainly seem blind to what's happening, teetering as they often do in the gospel narratives between belief and a befuddled bewilderment. The community is definitely blind to what's unfolding in their midst. They're more concerned with the confusion caused by this man's healing than with the fact that he was healed. This man, now that he can see, is like a stranger that's been caught hiding among them. His own family is blind to what has happened because they're too busy distancing themselves from their son, whom they now recognize as a danger to their social standing. Even the religious leaders are blind to God's work because they're more concerned with the threat that Jesus represents, a threat to their power, a threat to the order they oversee, a threat to the authority they command. God has come down off the mountain and has entered into the world. God is standing in the middle of this community, transforming it, and the blind man is the only one who can see it. And this brings us to the third irony that is the core of the tension in our story this morning. God can give sight to the blind, but God cannot make us open our eyes and see. God can't make us see each other as sisters and brothers, and God cannot make us see the world as it actually is. We are not the blind man the story, or the rest of the cast of characters. Like the disciples, we tend to see those who suffer and ask ourselves what it was that they did to deserve it. We see people who are on welfare and those who are homeless, but we don't see a person. Instead, we ask what form of laziness it is that afflicts them. And we see people in prison, but we don't see a person. We ask what sort of life, home life, or drug addiction has led them to this place. And we see children with sickness, but we don't see a child. We ask instead what manner of unhealthy and unwholesome food their parents must have fed them. We're like the villagers. We're unsure of what to do or how to react when a person breaks free of the label we've assigned them. We don't know what to make of the addict that has overcome their addiction. We're scared of the person who has been let free from a jail sentence, and we're uncomfortable with the person who sets aside stigma and is public about their HIV status. We can only see the label that these people once wore. We're blind to the transformation that God has wrought in their lives. And we're like the religious leaders, more often concerned with the disorder caused when God is at work and how it threatens to destabilize our grasp on power and authority. And we're quick to label people as traitors and heretics when they refuse to fit the status quo. We resent God for the ways in which God chooses to work salvation. And we rarely like the direction towards which God is moving creation. We seem to take any and every excuse to avoid seeing each other as human, to avoid seeing the other as a person. We have sight, yet we choose to close our eyes and not see what God is doing in the world around us and in the lives of our neighbors. Why is this? Perhaps it's because we're easily distracted. We get wrapped up in the details of our own lives. We mistake ourselves as being the center of the world. Perhaps we're not even sure that God does work in the world. But most of all, we're afraid at some level of the transformation that comes when we truly meet the other person with all the complexity and messiness that entails, the hopes and dreams, the fears and anxieties, the imperfections and the goodness that threaten the assumptions we make about each other and about the world around us. And so we stubbornly refuse to open our eyes, lest we be confronted by Christ. But though our eyes may be closed, God's eyes are not, and God does see us. Christ calls us by name and pursues us. The promise of this gospel message is that we can be like the blind man instead. We can be like the blind man who nonetheless saw God in his midst and saw God transforming his world. We can be like the blind man who received new sight and allow God to transform us so that we might see the world and each other anew. Christ, the light of the world, is in the world. Pray that we might open our eyes and see while it is yet day.